Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this new webinar. I'm Paul Rebolledo, CEO of Tandem Finance. As part of the events celebrating our 10th anniversary, it is my pleasure to introduce Rob Langrick, Chief Product Advocate of the CFA Program, who will speak about the benefits of being a CFA Charterholder, as well as provide an overview of the program and recent upgrades. Over the past 8 years, Rob has held key positions at the CFA Institute, including General Manager of the CFA Program. Throughout his career, he has worked at prestigious firms such as Bloomberg, Bain & Company, and HSBC. He holds an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth and a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Nottingham. After his presentation, we will have a Q&A session, so please feel free to ask any questions via chat or microphone. Well, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Rob. Thank you.
Cool, Paul. Thanks for the great intro. And I'm really thrilled to be here. I think I was with you, it was over a year ago now, last time I spoke with your community. So it's a real pleasure. Always fun to meet with you and to connect with your community. So really happy to share some updates to CFA Program. I have some brand new ones to share tonight. So stuff that's not even public yet. It'll be public next week. So I'm happy to share some good inside track knowledge. So let me do the following. Let me just quickly share my screen so I can show the PowerPoint here real quick. Here we go. Great. Okay, can you see that, Paul, on the screen?
We can see it.
Perfect. So let me just talk. I think we have it down for 25 minutes. So we can just briefly go through some of the benefits of becoming a charter holder and give you the updates, which is the fun stuff, and then Q&A. So I'm going to really sort of answer 5 questions here. So, who's got the charter? What sort of job roles has the CFA charter? Why do people start the program? What do we cover in the CFA program? What do we teach you? How can you take it? And then I'll talk through those latest innovations, including some really brand new ones. But let's really begin with the sort of who's got the charter. So I always like to show this helicopter view. This is how we think about Wall Street at CFA Institute. We think about it into 4 buckets. So you've got the buy side on the top left-hand side here. You got the sell side, so broker-dealers here. You got corporations down here, including their owners. That can be people working at corporations along with private equity owners, for example. And then you have advisory, people often advising corporations, accounting firms, corporate finance, M&A, strategy consultants, and so on. Now, the yellow bubbles are proportional to the number of CFA charter holders who do each job role. And it breaks out. I did this back in 2020 when there were about 150,000 CFA charter holders. There are now 204,000, so it keeps growing. But the proportions are still the same, basically. So a few observations. You can see that the biggest bubbles on the top left there, portfolio manager, that we are known for being a training program for portfolio managers. It's the biggest job role we serve. Second biggest is on the top right here, sell-side equity research analyst. That is what I did in London many years ago at HSBC. I think you mentioned that. And that's a common role. That's the A in CFA Charter Financial Analyst, so at least equity analysts. We also train credit analysts, by the way. But I think the important thing to observe with this chart, though, step back from it. You're like, wow, there's a lot of yellow bubbles on the chart. So we're not a single job role credential. We actually serve lots of different job roles. That's really important to recognize. Why is that? Because we're sort of we're what we call masters comparable. So we're like a fusion between a bachelor's in finance plus a master's in finance. Puts letters after your name. It's the equivalent of a master's that's been benchmarked. And so it's foundational. It's something you do early in your career, and look at all the doors it opens for people. So they find their way to all different job roles. And let me put it into the Peru context for you. So I'm now going to flip to my Bloomberg terminal, and I will show you, let's have a look at the people data in Peru and actually prove this point. So if I pull up the people database on Bloomberg, PEOP for people, and then let's have a look. They have 4 million or so records in the database, 4.4 million here, see the top right. Let's do location Peru. There we go. And we have about 4,000, just under 4,000 professionals in the Bloomberg people database. These are going to be people who work at, well, we can show you the sorts of firms they work for. Scroll down and you can see all the different firms they work for. There'll be banks, asset management firms, corporations, BBVA, and so on. Lots of different Central Bank of Peru and so on. Now, let's do something really interesting. Let's narrow down to just see a few CFA charter holders. So if I go into my education filter and say, right, of the 3,700 people, let's see who has reported to Bloomberg they have the CFA charter. Bingo. And we have 40 people here. Let's just zoom out real quick and let's look at the job roles they have. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. And the first thing to notice is that look on the right-hand side, they all have the CFA. So that's a group of people who self-reported. But let's have a look at those the job roles they have, the titles. So here we go. They're mostly in Lima, of course. Let's look at this. Chief Investment Officer, the CFO, Chief Strategist, trader, credit research, bond trader, portfolio manager. That's the big job role for us, analyst, lots of traders. So and remember, this is just a subset of the people in Peru with the CFA charter. It's just the ones that are self-reported to Bloomberg or on the Bloomberg database. But it kind of proves the point I just made, which is that you see a real variety of job roles, but a real strong focus on things like portfolio manager. And by the way, the fun thing on Bloomberg, it's not sort of green dot, they're online. So I could actually email Alonso if I wanted to, but I won't do that right now. You can do it on your own Bloomberg if you wish. It's a great networking tool, the PEOP function. Okay, so now you see that kind of diversity of job roles. So this is who has the charter, and you've seen it now in the Peruvian context as well. In terms of where they work, this is super interesting, actually. I've just updated this, actually. This is 1 year old. But that being said, the firm with the most charter holders globally, when we had 200,000 CFA charter holders late last year, was UBS with 2,500. Now, that was bumped up by the Credit Suisse merger. Since then, we've published a new one. If you Google where do CFA charter holders work on the internet, it'll take you to the league table. Been updated. Royal Bank of Canada is now #1. JP Morgan's still #2. Goldman Sachs has replaced Ernst & Young in the #10 position, by the way. But I think what's really interesting about this, and it's certainly true, as you heard earlier, I went to University of Nottingham in the UK. There are not a huge number of people who work in finance from University of Nottingham. But look at HSBC, where I worked, right? There are 1,400 people with a charter there, right? There are nothing close to 1,400 people at HSBC from University of Nottingham, where I went to undergraduate. So think about that. What an amazing networking tool this was for me at HSBC, where I had something in common with lots more people than just the people that went to University of Nottingham. Okay, so that's a really important thing to know. It's a great networking tool, both internally at firms like BBVA, for instance, which is a huge employer in Latin America, but also externally. So when you work for those firms, you've got something in common. People know you've been through this rigorous program. It's a really powerful networking tool. So that's a key thing to take away. But have fun. Do Google it. Where does CFA charter holders work? You'll love the new league table. And it goes down. It shows 58 employers. So have fun with that. Okay, in terms of where people start their journey, so what job role do they do? And this will be true in Lima as in New York. What job role do they do when they start the program? Here's the mix. And it's very similar to the bubble diagram you saw. It's lots of different job roles, right? Yes, accounting is the biggest one, but it's only 7% of people starting the program. And by the way, there are very few people in accounting level 2, level 3, because they move on from the big 4 accounting firms mostly. Equity analyst, that was my job at HSBC. That's #2. The A in CFA. Risk managers, financial planning, investment consultants, traders. We saw lots of traders on the Bloomberg database in Peru. So you see, it's just a diversity of different job roles. It's not for any single job role, okay? It's for all different job roles in institutional finance and private wealth. And by the way, I'll share these slides with you, so Paul will share them afterwards. So you'll have access to these afterwards. Okay, next question. Why do people do the CFA program? Why do people start studying for 900 hours to get through this master's comparable thing and get letters after their name? Well, first of all, this definitely attracts people. So you're looking here at the stack of books. This is actually a mix of 2023, 2024. The height's roughly the same for 2025 and will be the same for 2026. It's a big stack of books. It's 9,000 pages, actually. And people often say, Rob, why is it 9,000 pages? Why is it so long? Well, the answer is that look at the books on the left. These are the books it came from. Books like Fabozzi, look at Fabozzi on fixed income, the world's most famous fixed income training manual there. Ross Corporate Finance, the world's most famous corporate finance book. Greg Mankiw at Harvard, Economics, one of the world's most famous economics textbooks. Hull on derivatives, definitely the world's most famous. Bodekane and Marcus, the world's most famous investments textbook. But let me tell you something about these really famous books on the left. They are the most famous textbooks, and we actually imported basically Fabozzi to the CFA program here into the fixed income domain. And this is why, by the way, the books are the same height, because it's coming from those books. But what do these books on the left not have? How can you prove to someone you've read Fabozzi? You cannot. There's no Fabozzi exam, not even in the back of the book. Have a look at it. There are just a few questions. There's no exam. There's definitely no credential. There's no letters you can put after your name that you've read Fabozzi. And that's true of all these books. So the service we provide with the CFA program, we integrate all the best texts in finance, we add an exam, and then we have a branded credential to prove not just that you've read the books, but that you've mastered the books. And that is the service we offer with the CFA program. So that attracts a lot of people. I call it the codified orthodoxy of finance. It's the standard things people learn about valuation and so on as they go start their career in finance. Now, this is a scary diagram. So this is the pass rate going back to 1963. We're a 3-level exam, and you can see the different colors, green for level 1 and so on. And you see they drifted down as we grew and grew and grew. It's a very rigorous exam. Now, let me just explain something. These percentages are calculated as percent of people who turn up to the exam day, and not everybody does turn up to the exam day. So you have about a 50% pass rate. In fact, I think yesterday we reported level 3 results for the August 2025. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm going crazy. For the February 2025 window, and we had a 49% pass rate. So 49%, roughly half the people who turned up to the exam in February for level 3 passed, and half did not pass. It's a very rigorous exam. And think about it, you've got to pass level 1, then level 2, then level 3. Something like 1 in 7 or 1 in 10 people actually make it through. It's very rigorous. Now, is that good or bad? It's really good. It's very well known that it's really rigorous. It's on Bloomberg every time we publish the level 1 pass rates. In fact, across all 3 levels, everybody knows this, that it's the thing people know most of all about the CFA program, really hard exams, and that attracts employers to people who have CFA after their name. It's a very attractive thing, and because it attracts employers, it attracts candidates. People love a challenge. If it wasn't tough and rigorous, it would not be worthwhile, and it's very tough and rigorous, as evidenced by the pass rates. Okay, so I spoke to 309 people at the start of the pandemic. I think all of us were wondering what to do with our time. So I spoke to 309 CFA charter holders back 5 years ago. And I didn't survey them. I just had conversations, and I took great notes, handwritten notes. Then I thought, how can I categorize the reasons people gave me? And these are my categorizations. Number 1 is signaling value. So let me explain what that is. So signaling is when you make a personal sacrifice to demonstrate something to someone that's hard to fake, basically. And so, yes, you read that big 9,000 pages and you study for a hard exam, get letters out your name, hard to fake. So signaling value really links to our brand and trademark. So CFA is a trademark. It's protected legally. You cannot just put CFA on your LinkedIn profile or CFA on your business card unless you've gone through those hard exams, which have huge exam security. It's a hard currency. It's impossible to fake, and it's heavily branded. So it's a very simple way, actually, to not just to prove to someone that you're smart and hardworking. Now, I went to University of Nottingham. You probably heard about Nottingham from Robin Hood, right? From the Sheriff of Nottingham in the movie. For those old enough, the Kevin Costner movie, but Robin Hood, the guy that stole from the rich and gave to the poor, right? But, not many people have heard of Nottingham University. And the same is definitely true when you look at all the thousands and thousands of universities around. Yes, everyone's heard of Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Cambridge, but I didn't go to Oxford and Cambridge or Harvard and Yale. And so there's a real benefit, actually, of the fact that CFA is so heavily branded. So if people haven't heard of the university you studied at for undergraduate, they have heard of CFA, especially if they're working at someone like Goldman Sachs. So it's a really nice way to prove you're smart and hardworking. And also think about it. If someone's looking at 100 resumes, 100 CVs, curriculum vitae, right? They want to reduce the risk of taking the time interviewing you. You remove the risk significantly. You prove that you're numerate. You prove that you're hardworking. You prove that you're gritty. It's a lower risk to choose you for interview. And that's what gives you the edge, that branded edge is this signaling value. And that's what it is. And also value for money. Look at the price of a master's program, a residential. This is much, much, much cheaper. Okay, here's why I did it. It's kind of a small story for you. That is not me, by the way. That looks nothing like me. But I did it. I did a law undergrad, as you know, Paul mentioned earlier, at University of Nottingham, Robin Hood. And I did law. Look, I did physics, chemistry, biology when I was a teenager at high school, but then I did law, so there were no numbers, right? And so I get to HSBC in London doing equity research. And let me let you know a little secret about finance globally. Your firm is only going to train you on what they hired you to do. Okay, so think about that. I was hired by HSBC, remember, to do equity research. Were they going to teach me about fixed income? No. Why would they? Were they going to teach me about derivatives? No. Why would they teach me about derivatives? That's a waste of time and their money. They hired me to be an equity research analyst. But look at the news in the last few weeks, particularly. Do you need to know about the fixed income markets as an equity analyst or any role? Absolutely. But HSBC wasn't going to train me on that. Why would they? They very narrowly hired me to do one thing. And so the real beauty of the CFA program is the fact that it teaches you the different asset classes. And so if you didn't study at college finance, it's a really good thing. So let's go back to those Peruvians actually on the database. Actually, let's have a look what they studied at school. Actually, well, we can see well where they went to school. So some went to London Business School, probably did some did MBA. MBA, you see that MBA, yes, at MBA. Economics, a few of them economics, but some of them we don't know. Some did business. That's probably not going to teach you the asset classes there. Some we don't know. Economics, even if you study a bachelor's in economics, they don't teach you about derivatives, right? They don't teach you about portfolio management, mean variance optimization. And so think about that. There are big gaps in people, even looking at some of these great educational backgrounds, there are big gaps. And this is why they did the CFA, because they recognize the fact that even doing a great economics, go to a great school is not, you've got some big gaps in your knowledge. And that's what we fill with the CFA program. Okay, so let's talk about briefly what we cover. I will not go spend long on this, but it's a 3-level exam. Level 1 is very basic. It's very factual. It's all about the toolkit you need. So it's learning about economic indicators, how to read company accounts, how companies work, and so on. Level 2 is asset classes. It's single security analysis. This is where you learn the valuation stuff. And we're very well known for teaching valuation. The different asset classes have completely different valuation techniques, as you may know. So, equity has multiples, fixed income has spreads over the yield curve, derivatives has lots of different things, arbitrage pricing theory and so on, Black-Scholes. So they all have different valuation techniques. You learn that at level 2. Then at level 3, you've already valued lots of single securities and instruments. Now you put them together into a portfolio. It's how to construct a portfolio, how to have a legal contract with a client to meet their goals within their constraints, how to measure performance, how to manage risk, and so on, and how to rebalance the portfolio. It's all about portfolio management. And that is why, by the way, the biggest yellow bubble, remember, was portfolio management, because we're a finishing program for portfolio management training at level 3. We do have the topic weights here, and you can certainly go to our website. Suffice to say that level 1, level 2 really cover the 10 main topic domains, the asset classes and toolkits. Level 3 is different. It focuses on portfolio management, as you can see. You'll have these materials afterwards. Look at the blue link as well when you have time. Click on it or type it into your browser. It's really fun. It digs into much more detail in what we teach in the CFA program. So do take a look at that. It's really fun. Okay, how can you take the program quickly? Here's the scary exam room. They pretty much look the same all around the world. We do serve Lima, obviously. The room has no more than 26 seats in it. It's very modern. It's very spacious. You've got these kind of wooden things next to you, headphones on. So you can't hear your neighbor. It's very good for concentration. You just have the screen and a clean desk in front of you. The one thing I do recommend is wear layers the way I'm wearing layers now, because you don't know, like the cinema, you don't know how cold they're going to make the room. So just be careful, because if it's too cold in there, you don't want to just have a t-shirt on. So just be careful with that. But that's the exam room basically. So the exam itself, it's 4.5 hours long, roughly 4 hours and 28 minutes, actually, to be precise, and in two halves. So there's a 30-minute optional break in the middle. You'd be crazy not to take the optional break. I do the exam all the time to sample our products, and I just sit there for 30 minutes in the break. And the reason I do that, your brain just needs a break. Answering a lot of questions in a row is mentally takes a lot of blood sugar, and it's just nice to sit there, your eyes closed, and have a break. It can be 20 minutes, but definitely have a break because it's definitely a sprint, both halves of the exam. Now, level one. All level one it's 180 multiple choice questions. That is all level one CFA is, A, B, C. That's it. People are often surprised. They're like, wow, that sounds really easy. I assure you it's not easy. In fact, we've had about 1.4 million people try level one since 1963, and only 2 people ever have scored a perfect score. So it is really challenging. Level 2 is 88 multiple choice questions, A, B, C. Why is it short? Why does it have less questions but still 4.5 hours? Well, the answer to that is there's more reading to do. So the way it's structured, there are 22 what we call vignettes or professional scenarios. You have to read about the scenario, and then each scenario has 4 questions. So 22 multiplied by 4 equals 88, and there are fewer questions. And you would have thought, wouldn't you, that with 88 questions, that means more people would have scored a perfect score. You would, of course, be wrong. Nobody has ever scored a perfect score at level 2. So it could be you as you go through the program. And if it is, then we'll definitely have you on a webinar asking how you did it, which is what we did with level 1, by the way. Level 3, different again. So half of it's multiple choice questions, A, B, C, but the other half is what we call constructive response, where you type in some answers to some prompts. Typically about 5 sentences or less is all that's required. You don't have to show you're working necessarily. You can if you wish. And Paul, I'm sure, gives excellent coaching in terms of how to get through the level 3 constructive response section. One of the great services of prep providers is helping you think about the constructive response at level 3. So definitely recommend using a prep provider for that if you're a little bit nervous about it. So many people are. So definitely it's different from level 1, level 2. And the reason we do this, by the way, we don't just want to have people getting the CFA charter who don't have communication skills. Because if all you do is multiple choice A, B, C, an employer's not going to know if they can put you in front of a client. Whereas if you've gone through the constructive response, they're at least going to know, have some comfort that you've got some good communication skills and can accurately communicate technical information. So that's the reason we do it. It's for employers. They want to see that. Okay, innovations, and then I'll hand back to Paul for the next segment. So innovations, we've actually had 6 big ones. I'm going to show you 6 pictures, basically. So it's nice and easy, but really fun stuff. And I'll share some exclusive information with you here as well. So first of all, quite simply, when can you start studying for the CFA program? You can actually start 2 years before you finish undergraduate. So depending on how your school year is structured, it really is. If you've got a 4-year program, it's at the end of year 2. If you've got a 3-year program, it's at the end of year 1. So that's how soon you can start. Many people will, of course, start when they're working professionally. But if there are some very eager students, you're certainly welcome to start early. It may help you get an internship. It may help you convert an internship to a full-time offer. Certainly, this is very popular, in particular in the Asia region. Okay, so the big news. So practical skills modules. So we do require candidates at each level to finish 1 practical skills module. We don't examine it. We don't test it. The passing score is 0 technically, but we do require you to do hands-on exercises for each level, and you have a range of options. Level 1, you can do financial modeling. So that's building a financial model from a blank Excel spreadsheet, or you can do the basics of Python. I actually recommend doing both. You lose access on results day. So why not do both? Get full value for money. They're 15 hours each. They are fantastic. And if you haven't learned Python yet, this is your chance. Financial modeling is the most popular PSM we have, by the way. It's really beautiful. Starts with a blank Excel spreadsheet, then ultimately you get to balancing the balance sheet. Very satisfying moment. Level 2, we have the former head of training at Morgan Stanley Equity Research, Jim Valentine, who wrote a book that was quite famous in New York in 2011, which is all about analyst skills, how to be a rockstar equity research analyst. And he made it into a course. That's now part of level 2. It's all about things like time management, which valuation techniques to use, how to persuade a portfolio manager to buy or sell a security, and so on. It's a really fantastic, unique course. No one has ever really stepped out of that role and done a book like that. You can also go deeper in Python at level 2 with use cases, or you can do both PSMs at level 2 if you wish. I recommend doing both because they're basically free when you've registered. Now, level 3, here's the big news. So up to this year, 2025, we only have one option, which is called portfolio development construction, all about the mathematics of mean variance optimization. We're going to announce on Tuesday next week that we're adding 3 brand new practical skills modules at level 3. And the one I'll share with you now we're most excited by, we're going to do a big press release next week. It's called Practical Macro. And so there's a guy called Francois Trahan, who's French-Canadian originally. He's a serial ranked institutional investor, investment strategist who is an MD at Bear Stearns and MD at UBS, founded Cornerstone Macro. He's a big famous economist on Wall Street, and he's built a course all about how you link macro to micro, and ultimately how you look at macroeconomics and economic indicators to help you choose sectors, choose factors, and really generate alpha with your portfolio based on where we are in the economic cycle. The really hard bit is knowing where you are in the economic cycle. If you know where you are and you get that correct, then it's actually relatively straightforward to know which industries and factors to select for your portfolio. But the hard bit is really knowing where you are. So he talks about lots of economic indicators, lots of rules of thumb to apply, such as his favorite indicator is the ISM New Orders Index. He proves that extensively, why that's really valuable on the first day of each month. Coming out next week, by the way, going to be very interesting. But it's really the first time we're putting in alpha generation into the CFA program. That'll be a level 3 option. So you do need to get through to level 3 to then go on to Francois Trahan's Practical Macro, but I expect that to be extremely popular. Okay, Bloomberg. We've seen the Bloomberg terminal today. We looked at people in Peru with the CFA Charter, all those great firms like BBVA. Bloomberg's very popular. It's the #1 data platform in the world. We've woven in Bloomberg tips with level 1. We're adding it to level 2 as well. So you'll find that all the firms we looked at earlier, they'll have Bloombergs in Lima and common area Bloombergs. And it's really fun to learn it, really valuable. So we actually put Bloomberg tips next to where we teach you the concepts. So for example, when we teach you about inflation break-even rates to predict inflation, we teach you about the ILBE function, for instance, because we agree with Bloomberg, the best time to learn that function is when you're learning it in the CFA program. We don't test on Bloomberg functions. That's not in the exam at all. It's ancillary learning. So it's really good. Let's say you're studying at nighttime in your apartment in Lima. You're going to go back to your employer in the morning with a new Bloomberg function. Go and try it out. It's really fun, and you get more benefit from your CFA studies that way. Shortening of the curriculum. In 2024, we did shorten the curriculum. And here's what we did. You see the 3 books at the top. That's basic statistics, basic economics, and basic accounting. We no longer test that at level 1. And the reason we don't, you saw the people's profiles on the Bloomberg earlier. Lots of people have studied business and finance already. And they know basic statistics from the things they studied at university. In fact, 91% of people we calculated had already mastered this concept formally at school. So we don't test it anymore. You do need to learn it though. We do give it to you at registration if you need it, but we no longer test on it. Now, the exam is still 4 hours and 28 minutes, so I know exactly what you're now thinking. Hang on a minute, Rob. If you're taking out some easy questions, but you keep the exam at 4 hours and 20 minutes, doesn't that mean the exam got harder? The answer is no. Let me explain why. It is true. We took some easy questions out of the exam, but look at the stack of books there. What also makes the CFA program really difficult is the amount of content you have to memorize for exam day. So we've reduced that, and that offsets the fact that yes, we've removed some easier questions from the course. So what this means is the return on investment of time spent studying for CFA program has gone up for people at level 1 because there's less time spent studying to pass level 1 now, which is great for people. If you're one of the 9% like me that studied law, yes, you're going to need that. but we give it to you with registration, so you still have it if you do need to study that. But most people don't touch that content, by the way. We look at the usage data, so I think we got that right. Practice pack, if you do need more official mock exams, we certainly have them available. I'm sure Paul has excellent mock exams as well. This is just an added feature we have for candidates should they wish. And then finally, level 3 pathways. What is this? So, when you go to Harvard Business School or you do an accounting credential, at HBS at year 2, you can focus on different options, or at Duke, you can do medical management or Carnegie Mellon robotics, I'm sure. Every business school has different flavors in year 2 that you can specialize in. The accounting credentials now has different flavors at the back end of the CPA, for example. Like, I want to do tax, I want to do analytics or whatever. We've done the same thing with the CFA program. So the traditional flavor is portfolio management. You've heard me talk about that a lot this evening, but the 2 new flavors are private markets and private wealth. So why did we do that? They're very hot areas in the market. So even though you're hearing now some interesting stories about private markets, it's still $25 trillion in terms of asset size, and it is still growing. And it's a very hot area, very well paid job doing private markets. So that's very attractive. Or you can do the private wealth flavor. Now, some special information just for you guys. We found that about close to 30% of people have chosen the private markets flavor. So I think that the reason people have chosen that flavor at level 3 is it's just such a hot job. So the way it works is 2/3 of the curriculum is the same for everybody. 2/3 of the exams are the same for everybody. 1/3 is different based on that selection you make, basically. So 1/3 of the curriculum will be different based on your choice, and 1/3 of the exam will be different as well. So it's still the same CFA charter. Nobody knows which choice you did. It's just based on your interest. If you want to, work in banking, then go to a private equity firm, maybe think about doing private markets. If you want to work with wealthy clients, ultra high net worth, do private wealth. If you want to be a portfolio manager, like those other people on the Bloomberg terminal you saw in Lima, then sure, do the classic flavor. It's really up to you, but it just allows, like an MBA program, a little bit of specialization based on your interests. So that's it from me, Paul. They're my remarks. Happy to continue the conversation with you.
Thank you, Rob, for your valuable presentation. I basically want to remark this kind of the first thing that you said, that is we have a variety. The CFA community is a wide variety of professionals. It's like a melting pot of financial professionals from different backgrounds. And that basically reminds me my own experience. I've been working as a risk analyst at the Banco de Crédito, then as a CIO at BBVA and Scotiabank, and now I'm up in an R&D valuation position at one of the leading price providers in Latin America. So it's basically, you can cover many things, many issues, and that makes me question that my first makes me remember my first question is, how can you compare the CFA with the other with the other alternatives like the FRM or the CAIA or any other credential? How different is the CFA from these other alternatives of study?
I'd say so FRM has about 90,000 members or so. We have 204,000. So FRM is the biggest choice, the alternative you can do. Now, I will say though, the FRM though, think about the title, Financial Risk Manager. That's just one of the job roles. So it's very different in just how focused the FRM is. If you want to be a risk manager, certainly that is an excellent thing to do. And it's the original, and it really does kind of own that market space. In terms of other ones, let's take CAIA, the Chartered Alternative Investment Analyst. That's a topical credential as opposed to a single job role credential. It serves, if you want to be an investment consultant, if you want to be a limited partner asset owner, if you want to work at a general partner private equity firm, it's relevant for all of those things. If you want to work in fund marketing and so on. So it's more topical, I would say. And we have less coverage in the CFA program of alternative investments. We do have alternatives in there. It's one of the 10 knowledge domains. But if you want to go deeper, CAIA is a great choice to do that. What we do find with CAIA, by the way, the average age of people starting that tends to be a bit older than the average age of people starting the CFA program. And also about 40% of the 14,000 people with Kaya are CFA charter holders. So there's a huge overlap between the two audiences because I think many people finish the CFA program and they want more about alternatives and they go on to Kaya, which is a great choice to do. So all these credentials have different relationships with us. But I think that the really big difference between CFA program and the others is I think the sheer rigor. Nothing is 9,000 pages and 900 hours. It's by far the longest and hardest of the credentials. And as a result, it means that we have probably the strongest signal value because people know it's like doing a big marathon, basically. That you wouldn't say the same of Kaya or FRM. They're challenging, but they're not as long and difficult and have as low pass rate. And so that's really what distinguishes CFA from the other credentials is the sheer difficulty.
Perfect. So we're going to pick some questions from our tandem chat that were made previously from the webinar. And the first question would be, what are the differences between a postgraduate degree in finance and investments and a CFA certification in the job market? In what cases would one be recommended over the other? And on the same track, what advantages does the CFA certification offer over an MBA, for example?
Well, the first thing I'll comment is don't treat it as an either or. I have the MBA and the CFA, and lots of people do. We saw that on the database earlier, the Bloomberg database. So education is not exclusive. You can do both and many. I would say that the kind of strengths and weaknesses, though. So if you do the question was a postgraduate, maybe postgraduate finance. Let's call it a master's in finance. Well, the strength of a master's in finance really is the on-campus recruiting and the local connections to employers where they're going to come and hire someone from that program directly. And so often these programs have direct relationships with employers, and that will certainly be true in Peru. We're not a campus. We don't have that physical campus at CF Institute. We're virtual. And so that's not a service we provide. That sort of get that kind of conveyor belt from doing a master's program into an actual recruiting process. However, the kind of one of the unique strengths we do have is a few things. First of all, with 204,000 members, our alumni network is bigger than even the biggest MBA alumni network on planet Earth, which is NYU with 130,000, by the way. So we're much bigger than any business school or master's program in terms of size. We also, I think it's fair to say we have a stronger brand than almost all master's programs. So yes, people have heard of Harvard, but there are many master's programs people don't really know. They may not have heard of the school and they may not have heard of the program. So people know what they're getting with CFA. It's a more branded, standard thing that people are familiar with. So it means you don't have to explain it to people. Oh, so tell me about that program. That's not a question that comes up. And I would say as well, if your intention is to travel around the world and move to a different country, maybe you want to go and work in Atlanta or Miami or New York or London or Hong Kong, whatever, then I would say what people find when we talk to them is they often have not heard about their local university. Let's say it's Stellenbosch in South Africa. And then the benefit of the CFA then on top of that is the fact that it's just branded. So they're the differences. I'd say as well, on the MBA, you asked about MBA. I did an MBA at Dartmouth, Tuck, Ivy League school. I didn't go to Wharton or Columbia or NYU or Chicago, which are probably the four best finance MBA programs, right? But I think unless you go to one of those four schools, MBAs don't go particularly deep in finance. And also, you can't really fail an MBA program. So the signal value is more that, oh, you paid the money to do it, and you have a great network and on-campus recruiting, but it's just a different product. The MBA is about networking and about those local employer relationships. It's not really about signal value per se. And you'll find that unless you go to those four schools, you're not going to learn as much finance, not even close in even a top MBA program compared to the CFA program. So if you want to do finance, first of all, I wouldn't say it's either or, but I'd say it's a great thing to add, and certainly lots of people have both. But yeah, if you want to do finance, you'll learn a lot more finance in almost every single MBA program in the world with the CFA.
I totally agree. I agree in that it's a totally different product. And on the second, in the second sense, I would say that perhaps the MBA is like a complement of the CFA, because it gives you another kind of tools, in some sense different than what that CFA offers. I have another question here for you. What advantages would obtaining a CFA level 1 offer a graduate of business administration and finance in entering the international financial sector?
Oh, so if you study finance, what advantage would it give you over and above just your finance degree, you mean?
Yes.
Well, the branding, and the depth, I would say, and the networking. So look, there's this thing called Metcalfe's law, where the power of a network is proportional to the square of the number of nodes, I think it says. So networks are compound, basically. So when you add two networks together, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 3. And when you think about how that actually works, think about the Bloomberg database I showed you. If I email any of those 40 people in Lima and say, hey, it's Rob Langrick from CFA Institute, I have a much higher chance they're going to reply to my email than if I just emailed them, say, hey, my name is Rob, I work at CFA, blah, blah, blah. And so that's networking in action, in practice, is you just have a much higher chance people are going to pay attention to you and take a meeting and reply to your email, which in business is a big deal.
You mentioned something that is very important. It's a signaling value. And it's a signaling value that basically lowers the cost of employment, because if you have the CFA, it's like you are pretty more sure that what's the value of the professional, of the finance professional.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have another question here. How can the CFA certification assist in the evaluation of large-scale infrastructure investment projects? I mean, perhaps he's referring to the corporate finance track. And the other question related to that is, does the CFA program cover the topic of physical asset tokenization?
So, okay, so infrastructure and tokenization. So infrastructure first. Well, infrastructure is actually, infrastructure at the end of the day, like many things in finance, is cash flow mechanics. And we are by far the #1 program in learning cash flow mechanics, quite simply. So time value of money, which cash flows to use to actually derive valuation and so on. Specifically on infrastructure, if you do the private markets pathway at level 3 we talked about earlier, it contains quite a lot of content on infrastructure and lots of examples about airport construction projects and so on. So you're going to get some pretty specific training on infrastructure if you choose that pathway at level 3. So it's definitely one of the things we cover in the alternatives domain, not just at level 3, but also the other 2 levels as well, by the way. So there are some peculiar things to learn with infrastructure. On the digital assets and tokenization, yeah, we have a whole reading called Digital Assets in the CFA program. So we, I remember putting that in actually back in 2018. It was very controversial at the time. I don't think it's very controversial now. But yeah, we've put that in. We've had that in for a long time. We've refined the content, and yes, we teach about tokenization.
That's something that makes me remember how the curriculum has evolved in the recent years in comparison to, for example, to the topics that I studied. I studied the traditional topics, perhaps something more related to behavioral finance, but that was it. Now you have private markets, ESG, AI.
Yeah, we have trade wars and tariffs as well. We have geopolitics.
Yeah,
we have it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard. What would you say are the main themes in the following years that are coming on?
So look, we continually evolve, and so we have a process called practice analysis where we look at the evolution of the workflows on Wall Street, all those yellow bubbles we looked at. We look at what the new things are people are doing. So one of the biggest things that happened in recent history, it's really crept up on us, is the use of ETFs has been huge, and there are some really fun things to do with ETFs, such as you can put an ETF into Port-Go on Bloomberg or PA3 on FactSet. And you can run an attribution on it to see its style characteristics and so on. So it's really fascinating. Treat it like a portfolio basically, and say how exposed is it to this and that factor. the pure factor returns. So that's one huge kind of innovation we put into the program, which is really, really big. In terms of what's going to come next, it depends on what really happens next in the world. So we always try to be kind of on time with the things we're adding. I think that private markets will continue to get bigger and bigger. Let's say the law changes and people are allowed to have private market investing in their pension accounts, or their defined contribution, then I think that will drive a wave of growth. So I do think private markets, I do think private wealth are pretty big. I also think that more political analysis. So, when you think about threats to central bank independence, for instance, and you think about, what can happen with certain elections, what can happen with financial crises, how do things break? I think there's a lot to learn there. I mean, next week, hopefully there'll be quite a lot of attention on our practical macro module. But yeah, I can see us getting more and more into macroeconomics and understanding how macroeconomic developments are going to impact your portfolio and how to position your portfolio. So that's big and new. So we continually evolve and add whatever the big trend is in the marketplace. And we have done that since 1963, and we're going to continue to do that.
Perfect. We have the CFA, we have a question in the chat. CFA certification is useful for a DCM role?
Absolutely. Yeah. Debt capital markets. Yeah. Remember the Febosi book we looked at earlier, the big fat textbook on bonds. It's the world's #1 textbook. By the way, Frank Febosi is a CFA Charterholder.
Yeah.
So we are, it's interesting. I did a survey a year ago on LinkedIn, or 18 months ago. And I asked the question, where did you learn fixed income? And I said, did you learn it on the job from your neighbor, your boss, whatever? Did you learn it in a CFA, in a credential program like CFA? Did you learn it by using the Bloomberg terminal? Da, 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 da. And we found that 60% plus learned it from, or did you learn it from Febosi by reading a book? Hardly anybody said reading a book. And over 60% of people said the CFA program. We are the world's #1 place to come and learn fixed income, which is $100 trillion asset class. And so I think that's really the jewel in the crown of the CFA program, in my opinion, is the fixed income content, the world's biggest asset class. And if you exclude the nominal value of derivatives, which you probably should. But yeah, so it's really the jewel in the crown, and it's the main place people will come and learn fixed income globally.
I have some specific questions about how to use the CFA name. When a candidate passes CFA level 1, is it permissible to state on the resume or LinkedIn profile that they have passed the level, and so on for subsequent levels? Can the badge provided via QR code also be included on a resume or LinkedIn profile?
So yes, you're allowed to put factual information on your resume, and saying I passed level 1, provided that's true, that's factual information on your resume. What you can't do is put CFA after your name if you are not a member of CFA Institute, meaning you not only have to pass level 3, you also have to apply for membership and become a member. Otherwise, you're not allowed to. We have AI and we have people looking for that, and you're going to get a letter if you do that without permission. In terms of QR code, there's actually a part of our website where you can look up anyone's name, first name, last name, and see whether or not they're a CFA Charterholder. So you can certainly tell employers that's a way to validate. That's only for CFA Charterholders. That does not work, saying that will not prove or disprove you. Let's say you've just passed level 1. What you can do is contact our contact center, though, to document and get a letter saying I passed level 1. Can I document that? You can also just keep the email score report to document that as well. That's one thing you can do. No, we don't offer a QR code to do that. That's a really nice idea. I'll take that back to the product team, but that's not something we do right now. We do have badges that are validated on LinkedIn. So that's a pretty nice thing. It's from a vendor called Accredible. And so if you take that, so when you pass level 1, you'll get an email saying, do you want to add the official badge to your LinkedIn? Yes, I do. Great. You have to do that yourself. You add it on your LinkedIn. Employer looks down your LinkedIn, and then they click on it, and bang, it takes them to the official Accredible page. So it's validated. So that's a really easy way to kind of prove to an employer you passed level 1.
Yeah, the badge is a really great idea for signaling. That's what we were talking about earlier. I have another specific question here. If I defer a CFA exam level 2, can I defer it again within the same 12-month period? If it is not allowed, would it be considered a failed attempt?
So that depends. So are you allowed to defer more than once on a single reservation? No, you are not. Unless, let's say you do a paid deferral once and you pay us $449, which is much lower, by the way, than paying full price again. If you did that and then you schedule for a later window and then said, oh, I need to move. If you have an emergency, a death in the family, then yes, you can do another deferral on the same booking. But if you don't meet those narrow criteria for an emergency deferral, no, you cannot. Sorry, what was the second part of that question, Paul?
The second part was, is it if it is not allowed, would it be considered a failed attempt?
Oh, um, no, you haven't failed unless you go to the test center and don't meet the minimum passing score. That's the only scenario in which you fail. Instead, if you don't schedule even, you're not considered anything.
Okay.
You abandon your booking. If you did schedule and you didn't turn up, you're considered what's called a no-show. That's not a fail. That's a no-show. The only way you're a fail, let's say you go and sit down in that room and you start the exam and then you walk out and you didn't even answer a single question. You're considered a fail then. Why? Because you sat down in the chair and started. So that's the thing. The only way you can fail is if you sit in that chair. If you don't sit in that chair ever and actually start the exam, it's not a fail, it's a no-show.
Excellent. What would you think is the best order to study CFA level 1 topics?
There's all this folklore. People say, "Oh, do ethics last? No, do ethics first." I just studied it in a straight line, as given to me. I'm a straight line linear studier. I don't believe
Me
there's much.
too, actually.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's much advantage to be gained
Yes.
by jumping around. And I don't think there's much advantage to be gained, by the way, from jumping around in the exam either. At the end of the day, you got 180 questions. Why, on what basis would you do them in a different order? I don't really understand that. But in the exam, by the way, if you have an exam with lots of a question with lots of mathematics, think, that's too time consuming, I'm too stressed. That's fine. Just flag it and move on. There's a really easy way to come back to all flag questions. That's the scenario when you do a funky order, fine. But no, I don't recommend doing strange orders of studying. People say that it's really hard to memorize ethics, so do it at the end. Some people say that and swear by it. I don't know. I read the curriculum two or three times each time I did I think three times each time, at least three times. And honestly, if you're in the curriculum three times and doing questions, you're gonna remember a lot of stuff. It doesn't matter which order you did it in. So
Actually, I did the same. I read it 3 times when I was studying, and that was really helpful
yeah,
just to remember.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
it starts to
yeah,
space repetition. It beds
yes.
down.
That's, uh, Rob, what would you say in the following years are the main challenges for the CFA program? Uh, Perhaps in terms of ethics, in terms of gifts, or any other topic that you would think about?
Um, Well, I mean, we're the continual fight we have with the CFA program is staying up to date and shadowing Wall Street and making sure we are relevant to the workflows. That's always a work in progress. We constantly are paranoid about relevance and making sure we've got the latest thing in the CFA program. Um, Ethics, well, we do update ethics every few years, so that is slower to update, but we do update it. But many of the ethical principles are fairly timeless, I would say. On GIPS, we also update the GIPS, which is the Global Investment Performance Standards. We keep that up to date. Actually, we have a very strong market position there globally, and we're the market leader. So I don't think that's an issue for us. Um, I think that one thing you're going to see more from CFA program is more and more, I'd say, toolkit inclusion. So you're probably going to see more Microsoft Excel in both the curriculum and maybe the exam. You may at some point see Bloomberg on the exam. You may at some
Yeah.
point see Python on the exam. Not yet. And the reason I say that is that it's been really popular when we talk about toolkits, so in particular Bloomberg, Python, and Excel, it's really
Yes.
popular with people. In fact, I'm doing a webinar in late May with the two world champions at Microsoft Excel, the guys that won the Microsoft Excel World Cup in
Yes.
December. And it's very pop. Everyone wants to talk about Microsoft Excel innovations right now.
Yes.
And so that's a hint to us that people want to learn more about the actual toolkits they use on Wall Street. And so that's probably the direction we're going to go in. So watch this space. So it won't just be reading PDFs, but actually you'll probably see them embedded inside the studying and also inside the exam at some point.
Yes. Speaking about this, I have the perception that the recent curriculum, the recent changes are oriented more towards hands-on work, toward more employer-oriented, more signaling-oriented, more as you said, toolkit, just for working to be very practical.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I talk to employers, the thing that I showed you guys some slides earlier. When I showed that Bloomberg slide, people are like, oh, wow, okay, we have a Bloomberg. So, for example, employers love that because they're like, okay, now you're killing two birds with one stone. You're actually providing extra value we didn't think you were providing. And they love that because then they're getting more value out of their $30,000 Bloomberg subscription.
Yes. Well, Rob, time's up. I think it has been a very insightful webinar. Thank you for sharing your valuable experience and insights with our candidates and potential candidates. We truly appreciate you being part of the events celebrating our 10th anniversary in tandem. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you for being here. We hope you found the session valuable and inspiring. Until next time, take care and stay curious. And also see you, Rob, in Chicago.
See you in Chicago. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1 week. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Congratulations on the 10-year anniversary. Great to see everyone tonight.
Thank you, Rob. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.